Good afternoon, everybody. Some brief information about housekeeping, how to participate. We will have translation from Polish into English and from English into Polish. When you will look for the translation, Polish in this solution means Portuguese. Yes, so please, if you want to listen to the meeting in Polish and somebody will present the view in English, press Portuguese. I think that now we can start. Again, hi everybody, and we are at the meeting organized at the SWPS University, University in Warsaw, University for Social Sciences and Humanities. And this is a meeting organized by Center for Innovation, and in the series of Humantech meetings, where science and technology meet human. I think it's very, very important because this is the opportunity for all of us for students, for people, this is an open meeting now, to discuss some key issues related to the new technologies, and at the same time to the human perspective, how to use human perspective, how to have human control over technologies, and so on and so on. Today we will discuss about cybersecurity challenges and how to build resilience to digital viruses and other online threats. As you all know, this is a special time, digital acceleration. As more we are using digital tools, as more threats we can meet, and this is a very hot topic and important for digital development for the future. We have invited the excellent lecturers and panelists. You can see Sir Julian King, the former EU Commissioner responsible in 2016-2019 for counterterrorism, cybersecurity, tackling hybrid threats, disinformation, and securing critical digital infrastructure. Earlier, he was involved in many governmental activities in UK, and after that in the Commission. He's also related to the Oxford University. So welcome, and I hope that it will be interesting for all of us and also for you. We will start with the presentation of the new solutions addressed to Network Information Security Directive with the head of unit from the DG Connect, Jakub Boratyński. Jakub Boratyński was involved in the preparation of previous Network Information Security Directive and also Cybersecurity Act, and worked very hardly with member states how to implement it. And also he organized the works between member states how to react and how to respond for some threats related to 5G network and make the 5G network much more secure. In the panel, we will have Tomasz Jakimowicz from GSMA, very important and very big organization active at the area of telecom developments with special responsibilities addressed to 5G and public affairs. We will have Liga Rosenthaler from Microsoft, also responsible for many important issues crucial for not only cybersecurity, but all aspects of this company related to societal implementation of digital solutions. We will have Professor Darek Kowalski. He is the professor at our university, but now he is working in the School of Computer and Cyber Sciences, Augusta University, Georgia, United States, and I think because of his competences, he will be very, very important person in our discussion with his experience and knowledge. And last but not least, we will have Krzysztof Silicki, this person in Poland who was from the nearly very beginning responsible for many solutions addressed to cybersecurity challenges. Now he is in NASK and also responsible for NASK as a research institute. So I think that we have the excellent people for our discussion. And as I have mentioned at the beginning, this is a special time. We need to focus on cybersecurity issues if you want to develop all those possibilities, opportunities done by digital acceleration. And after some years of the functioning of implementation of Network Information Security Directive and Cybersecurity Act, the European Commission decided to discuss with partners and present the new solutions at this area, and it will be presented, I don't know, but probably in the second part of December. But Kuba Boratyński, I think, will present the issue. So, Kuba Boratyński, the screen is yours.
So, thank you very much, Michał. It's a great pleasure to be here at the conference hosted by SWPS. I realize actually it's even in the part of town I'm from, but again, you know, I haven't been there for quite a while. So again, it's a great pleasure to be here, especially, you know, seeing so many familiar faces and in this distinguished panel. And of course, I'm also extremely happy to see Commissioner Julian King. I mean, he really played an extremely important role bringing dynamism to the project of Security Union, and definitely, you know, the work on 5G toolbox to a considerable degree is basically legacy of his strong personal commitment, and it was under his watch that the original 5G cybersecurity recommendation was adopted. So if you can go to the first slide, please. So again, I would not actually present to you everything, but that was basically this is the presentation that I'm happy to share with all the participants. But indeed, I would focus predominantly about the review of the NIS directive and on security of 5G networks. And Michał, please tell me also, you know, in terms of time, because I think with so many participants, I don't really want to abuse my time. And if our, let's say, international participants will forgive me, I thought that given the large Polish audience, I would actually continue speaking in Polish. So, and anyway, many of you have heard me before, so I think it will not be a big loss for you if you follow me through the interpretation. Proszę Państwa, także bardzo się cieszę, że mogę Państwu przedstawić tutaj zręby europejskiej polityki cyberbezpieczeństwa i przede wszystkim chciałbym się skoncentrować na dyrektywie NIS i może przejdźmy do następnego slajdu, który, jeżeli możemy przełączyć następny slajd, tak, i może jeszcze następny. Tak, to jest taka krótka, takie pokazanie w perspektywie czasowej inicjatyw Unii Europejskiej w tej dziedzinie. Także wydaje mi się, że slajd w tej chwili zniknął, Natomiast to, co jest jakby istotne, to musimy sobie zdawać sprawę z tego, że europejska polityka w dziedzinie cyberbezpieczeństwa ma już w jakimś sensie pewną historię, ale to wszystko nie zaczęło się aż tak dawno. Tak? Takim pierwszym bardzo istotnym elementem była pierwsza europejska strategia cyberbezpieczeństwa przyjęta w roku 2013 i właśnie to jej takim kluczowym elementem była propozycja legislacyjna dyrektywy NIS. Ona się wiązała z taką, bym powiedział, dosyć elementarną konstatacją, że cyberbezpieczeństwo staje się coraz ważniejsze dla rynku wewnętrznego, a jednocześnie jeśli spojrzymy na ówcześnie, jeśli byśmy spojrzeli na przygotowanie poszczególnych państw członkowskich do radzenia sobie z tym wyzwaniem, no były tutaj olbrzymie naprawdę różnice. Także to była w sumie dosyć prosta idea, żeby doprowadzić do tego, żeby w państwach członkowskich powstały pewne jakby zasadnicze struktury, polityki, które pozwolą na to, żeby w sposób odpowiedzialny radzić sobie z tym problemem. To dzisiaj jest absolutnie oczywiste, że trzeba się tym zajmować na poziomie europejskim, ale w roku 2013 być może wcale tak oczywiste nie było. Trzeba pamiętać, że ta kwestia jest jednak bardzo blisko związana z bezpieczeństwem i z tego punktu choćby widzenia jakby nie należy do tradycyjnej kompetencji Unii Europejskiej z punktu widzenia traktatów europejskich. Także my zawsze się poruszamy na takim trudnym, na krawędzi pomiędzy z jednej strony wymiarem ekonomicznym cyberbezpieczeństwa. Wiadomo, że bez cyberbezpieczeństwa trudno o to, by dobrze funkcjonował jednolity rynek cyfrowy, by obywatele nie bali się korzystać z rozmaitych usług, które są oferowane w cyberprzestrzeni. Też z punktu widzenia oczywiście funkcjonowania firm, to wszystko jest bardzo ważne, no ale jak mówię, poza tym jest ten bardzo istotny wymiar bezpieczeństwa narodowego, wymiar geopolityczny, który rzeczywiście wykracza poza kompetencje traktatowe. Jak Państwo widzą na tej osi czasowej, po dyrektywie NIS mieliśmy kolejny taki pakiet cyberbezpieczeństwa w roku 2017, przyjęcie aktu o cyberbezpieczeństwie w roku 2019 i wreszcie bardzo intensywna praca nad 5G, która przez ostatnie 2 lata i jak Michał powiedział, tak, w przyszłym tygodniu pojawi się, że tak powiem, kolejny pakiet cyberbezpieczeństwa. No niestety nie mogę mówić o jego szczegółach, no bo póki co nie jest publiczny, ale o pewnych sprawach opowiem. Wróćmy wobec tego teraz do dyrektywy NIS. Na kolejnym slajdzie zobaczą Państwo zasadnicze elementy tej dyrektywy, więc ona jest oparta na 3 filarach. W pierwszym, i o tym jakby już trochę wspomniałem, chodziło o to, by w państwach członkowskich powstały po prostu odpowiednie struktury, więc były organy właściwe zajmujące się cyberbezpieczeństwem, powstały krajowe CERT-y i wreszcie krajowe strategie dotyczące cyberbezpieczeństwa. Polska nie była w tej dziedzinie zupełnym nowicjuszem, chwała Bogu, chociaż to jest też tak, że to dzięki dyrektywie NIS tak naprawdę powstała pierwsza taka kompleksowa ustawa regulująca sprawy cyberbezpieczeństwa. Zresztą mamy tutaj wśród nas jednego z ojców, że tak powiem, założycieli tego krajowego systemu cyberbezpieczeństwa, Krzysztofa Silickiego, który nad tym właśnie bardzo usilnie pracował. Drugim filarem dyrektywy NIS to ramy do współpracy europejskiej. Z jednej strony mamy tak zwaną grupę współpracy, która pozwala na koordynację polityk w dziedzinie cyberbezpieczeństwa. Jak się okazało, początkowo miało to służyć przede wszystkim pomocy wzajemnej we wdrażaniu tej dyrektywy, ale w praktyce okazało się, że to rzeczywiście jest takie super ważne forum współpracy w dziedzinie cyberbezpieczeństwa i to właśnie ta grupa współpracy była takim głównym motorem europejskich działań na rzecz bezpieczeństwa sieci 5G. I mamy oprócz tego drugi komponent tej współpracy, to jest sieć CERT-ów czy CSERT-ów, które odpowiedzialne są za współpracę o charakterze operacyjnym, technicznym. CERT-y dla osób tych z Państwa, którzy nie są w pełni wtajemniczeni, to są, można powiedzieć, grupy specjalistów w zakresie cyberbezpieczeństwa, których jakby specjalnością jest reagowanie na poważne incydenty. I tego typu struktury w tej chwili, między innymi dzięki dyrektywie, są we wszystkich państwach członkowskich. I wreszcie trzeci filar tej dyrektywy o którym w sensie czasami najwięcej słychać, to po prostu zobowiązania, które ciążą na wybranych podmiotach gospodarczych. I tutaj dyrektywa NIS tak naprawdę wprowadziła te obowiązki dla podmiotów w tych sektorach krytycznych, więc w sektorze ochrony zdrowia, transportu, energii, usług finansowych. I teraz tak, to, co było bardzo charakterystyczne dla tego wczesnego etapu europejskiej polityki cyberbezpieczeństwa, to była rzeczywiście pewna trudność wynegocjowania, jak dalece państwa członkowskie są ze sobą gotowe współpracować. I to jest w dziedzinie polityki cyberbezpieczeństwa zawsze kluczowe wyzwanie, jak doprowadzić do tego, by rozmaitego typu partnerzy, interesariusze byli w stanie w sobie choćby w minimalnym stopniu zaufać. Mówimy tu o zaufaniu pomiędzy państwami członkowskimi, ale mówimy również o zaufaniu ze strony firm w stosunku do organów właściwych, gotowości dzielenia się informacją, niejako można powiedzieć odkrywania kart. To wszystko jest bardzo trudne i to niewątpliwie ciążyło na tym, że te negocjacje trwały bardzo, bardzo długo. Także to porozumienie zostało osiągnięte po 3 latach. No ale jak mówię, przyniosło to bardzo, że tak powiem, pozytywne i realne zmiany, zwłaszcza jeśli weźmiemy pod uwagę, można powiedzieć, inwestycje w cyberbezpieczeństwo, zarówno na poziomie państw członkowskich, jak i na poziomie firm, które rzeczywiście, i to widzieliśmy też chociażby podczas wizyt w państwach członkowskich, do tego problemu rzeczywiście zaczęły w coraz większym stopniu podchodzić poważniej. Teraz to może przejdziemy do następnego slajdu. Komisja na początku tego roku, czy możemy przewinąć? Tak. Na początku tego roku podjęła decyzję o tym, że dokonamy kompleksowego przeglądu tej dyrektywy. To, jak państwo wiedzą, jest taki standardowy element, można powiedzieć, mechaniki europejskiej, że akty legislacyjne europejskie co jakiś czas ulegały ocenie, podlegało przeglądowi i myśmy z punktu widzenia jakby zapisów dyrektywy mieli to zrobić najpóźniej do maja przyszłego roku, ze względu na niewątpliwie bardzo dynamiczne zmiany, jeśli chodzi o zagrożenia w dziedzinie cyberbezpieczeństwa, na niewiarygodną zupełnie ekspansję internetu rzeczy i że tak powiem, i na koniec oczywiście szok, który wywołała pandemia, który jakby spowodował rzeczywiście takie turbo doładowanie, przyspieszenie procesu cyfryzacji. To wszystko były czynniki, które spowodowały, że postanowiliśmy tę pracę przyspieszyć. I teraz jeśli chodzi o kwestię tego, czemu się przyglądaliśmy, to przyglądaliśmy się między innymi kwestii tak zwanej identyfikacji operatorów usług kluczowych. To była pewne takie, w jakimś sensie bardzo rzadkie rozwiązanie, jakie w tej dyrektywie zastosowano, zamiast z góry określić zakres podmiotowy tego prawa, ze względu na właśnie tą wrażliwość, powiązanie z kwestiami bezpieczeństwa narodowego, państwa członkowskie preferowały rozwiązanie, w którym to one będą na zasadzie oceny ryzyka decydować, które firmy będą ostatecznie objęte obowiązkami wynikającymi z tej dyrektywy. Muszę powiedzieć, że akurat ten element funkcjonowania dyrektywy był przez nas oceniany dosyć krytycznie. To, co widzieliśmy, to sytuacje, w której ta praktyka identyfikowania operatorów w dosyć dużym stopniu się różniła między poszczególnymi państwami członkowskimi, co skutkuje sytuacjami trochę paradoksalnymi. Na przykład w jednym kraju wszystkie szpitale, wszystkie kliniki są potraktowane jako operatorzy usług kluczowych, znowu w innym kraju członkowskim jest to dosłownie kilka szpitali. W niektórych krajach krajowa firma kolejowa czy koleje państwowe w danym kraju są operatorem usług kluczowych, w innym kraju nie są. To z punktu widzenia funkcjonowania rynku wewnętrznego, jak również oczywiście w ogóle skuteczności działań w zakresie cyberbezpieczeństwa, jest to wysoce suboptymalne rozwiązanie i z tego punktu widzenia rzeczywiście to jest coś, co chcemy dosyć radykalnie zmienić w nowej propozycji legislacyjnej, którą przedstawimy w przyszłym tygodniu. Przyglądamy się również temu, jak regulowana jest pozycja tak zwanych operatorów cyfrowych, ponieważ oni byli poddani tak zwanemu lekkiemu light touch regime, to byli traktowani w sposób mniej rygorystyczny przez państwa członkowskie. Następnie, i to jest bardzo rzeczywiście istotny element tego przeglądu, zastanawialiśmy się, jakiego typu kolejne elementy, sektory gospodarki, również uwzględniając lekcje pandemii, powinny zostać objęte wymogami w zakresie cyberbezpieczeństwa. Teraz jeśli mowa o tych wymogach w zakresie cyberbezpieczeństwa, tak naprawdę mówimy tutaj o dwóch elementach. Z jednej strony jest to obowiązek zarządzania ryzykiem przez firmy, to znaczy po prostu podejmowania różnych działań w zakresie cyberbezpieczeństwa. Tu zawsze wychodzimy z założenia takiego, że nadmierna, nie wiem, preskryptywność nie jest rzeczą właściwą, dlatego że środki bezpieczeństwa, które podejmują firmy, zawsze muszą być oparte na realnej ocenie tych zagrożeń, a nie być, że tak powiem, efektem tego, że jacyś, powiedzmy, nie wiem, biurokraci sobie wymyślili, że trzeba dokładnie zrobić tak, a nie inaczej. Więc to jest bardzo ważne, że ta zasada oceny ryzyka, zarządzania ryzykiem jest kluczowa z punktu widzenia efektywnego radzenia sobie z wyzwaniami w zakresie cyberbezpieczeństwa. I drugim takim wymogiem to jest obowiązek raportowania poważnych incydentów. No i wreszcie to, czemu się przyglądamy, to temu, jak funkcjonują te organy właściwe w zakresie cyberbezpieczeństwa i CISERT-y i jak wreszcie funkcjonuje współpraca na poziomie europejskim. Teraz następny slajd jakby podsumowuje to, co chcemy osiągnąć w tej nowelizacji tej dyrektywy. Więc jednym z tych elementów będzie objęcie nią kolejnych sektorów gospodarki. Druga rzecz, zmiana obecnego systemu identyfikacji na takie raczej dużo prostsze założenie, w którym po prostu w wybranych sektorach będziemy proponowali, by wszystkie przedsiębiorstwa duże lub średnie podlegały wymogom dyrektywy w wybranych sektorach. Tak? To znaczy wykluczamy w związku z tym przedsiębiorstwa, mikroprzedsiębiorstwa i małe przedsiębiorstwa, też dbając o to, by ciężary, które będą wywołane przez europejską regulację, nie były zbyt duże. Chcemy również doprowadzić do tego, żeby te wymogi, które znowu się bardzo, bardzo różnią między państwami członkowskimi, były bardziej ze sobą skoordynowane czy zharmonizowane. I również chcemy szczególny nacisk też położyć między innymi na kwestię zarządzania ryzykiem związanym z łańcuchem dostaw i z relacjami z dostawcami usług czy towarów. To jest z punktu widzenia cyberbezpieczeństwa bardzo ważne i też w kontekście sieci 5G oczywiście jest bezpieczeństwa sieci 5G jest też bardzo istotnym elementem. Chcemy również zharmonizować sposób, w jaki są raportowane incydenty, wzmocnić środki, sankcje i również środki nadzoru, jakie mają państwa członkowskie i wreszcie wprowadzić pewne elementy dotyczące zarządzania kryzysowego do tej dyrektywy. Także to są główne elementy. Oczywiście wszystkie szczegóły, nową propozycję legislacyjną zobaczą państwo w przyszłym tygodniu wraz ze strategią. Mamy nadzieję, że rzeczywiście będzie to zmiana pozytywna. To, co chciałem powiedzieć, to, że rzeczywiście bardzo dużo zainwestowaliśmy w trakcie tego mijającego roku i muszę powiedzieć, nawet pandemia nam aż tak bardzo nie przeszkodziła, w bardzo szerokie i dogłębne konsultacje. Były to zarówno publiczne konsultacje, jak i konsultacje z państwami członkowskimi, w których byliśmy dosyć, jakbym powiedział, otwarci na temat naszych planów. Także różne te pomysły były też testowane w tym sensie z państwami członkowskimi, co oczywiście nie oznacza, że jak propozycja zostanie położona na stole legislacyjnym, to wszyscy jej przyklasną. Na pewno będą punkty sporne i na pewno ta propozycja będzie podlegała oczywiście głębokiej dyskusji podczas negocjacji zarówno w Radzie Ministrów, znaczy w Radzie, w Radzie Ministrów, jak również w Parlamencie Europejskim. Także będziemy bardzo, że tak powiem, ciekawi też na reakcje i na dalsze dyskusje na temat tej propozycji legislacyjnej. Ważne jest o tym, żeby pamiętać, że to jest oczywiście tylko jeden z wielu elementów tej polityki cyberbezpieczeństwa, że sama legislacja oczywiście nie jest panaceum na to, żebyśmy w sposób bardziej skuteczny radzili sobie z wyzwaniami w tej dziedzinie. Może teraz parę słów rzeczywiście o kwestii 5G. Także poproszę następny slajd. Tak, także w skali makro oczywiście to jest tak, że firmy telekomunikacyjne można powiedzieć, w jakimś sensie są prekursorami w dziedzinie cyberbezpieczeństwa z tej prostej przyczyny, że to jest jeden z tych sektorów, który bardzo wcześnie i bardzo szybko podlegał, że tak powiem, cyfryzacji. W związku z tym w istniejących rozwiązaniach w kodeksie telekomunikacyjnym czy we wcześniejszej dyrektywie ramowej telekomunikacyjnej były już zobowiązania na operatorach dotyczące podejmowania właśnie środków w zakresie bezpieczeństwa. Również jakby trzeba widzieć, że te zobowiązania są też właśnie w dyrektywie NIS. Teraz przejdźmy może do następnego slajdu, który może pokaże Państwu tą jakby historię dotyczącą europejskiej współpracy w dziedzinie sieci 5G. Więc tak, zaczęło się to, no, i tutaj właśnie wspominałem o osobistej roli komisarza Juliana Kinga w tej sprawie. Zacznijmy może od tego, dlaczego 5G jest tak ważne. 5G jest to z jednej strony po prostu kolejna generacja łączności mobilnej, natomiast rzeczywiście to wyzwanie jest związane z tym, że dokonuje się jakby taki no rzeczywiście wielki skok polegający na tym, że cechy tej technologii pozwalają rzeczywiście na wprowadzanie zupełnie nowej generacji usług, takich na przykład jak rzeczywiście autonomiczne pojazdy, jak przeprowadzane zdalnie operacje chirurgiczne, jak sterowanie na odległość procesami produkcyjnymi w fabrykach. Także z tego punktu widzenia jakby wiadomo, że generalnie bezpieczeństwo sieci telekomunikacyjnych zawsze było ważne ze względu na ochronę poufności, ze względu na ochronę danych. Natomiast tu rzeczywiście ta stawka rośnie dużo bardziej, dlatego że stawką jest nie tylko poufność danych, ale być może w przypadku rzeczywiście aktorów, którzy mają nieczyste intencje, próba ataków na tego typu sieci może spowodować jak najbardziej dramatyczne, że tak powiem, skutki tej rzeczywistości fizycznej, która nas otacza. Więc to bezpieczeństwo jest rzeczywiście niezwykle ważne. Stąd też mieliśmy na początku zeszłego roku też na ten temat dyskusji w Parlamencie Europejskim. Mieliśmy też wezwanie ze strony Rady Europejskiej, żeby w tej sprawie wspólnie działać i efektem tego była rekomendacja Komisji o bezpieczeństwie sieci 5G. I to było o tyle bardzo ciekawym, to uruchomiło bardzo interesujący proces, w którym państwa członkowskie wspólnie przy wsparciu Komisji Europejskiej, Europejskiej Agencji do Spraw Cyberbezpieczeństwa dokonały po pierwsze takiej kompleksowej oceny ryzyk związanych z sieciami 5G, której efektem była taka publikacja w październiku zeszłego roku skoordynowanego ocena ryzyk związanych z sieciami 5G i wreszcie przyjęcie na początku tego roku, pod koniec stycznia, tak zwanego toolboxu środków, które miały za zadanie właśnie na te ryzyka odpowiedzieć. Środków strategicznych, środków o charakterze technicznym i może przejdźmy do następnego slajdu.
5 minutes, Kuba.
Tak, więc ja myślę, że ja bym rzeczywiście w tym momencie, tak, i to rzeczywiście jest takim niezwykle ciekawym przykładem tego, że w obliczu wyzwań, w obliczu geopolitycznych napięć, jakie związane są chociażby z tym, że czy Stany Zjednoczone, czy Europa ma poczucie, że jakby traci, że w niewystarczającym stopniu dysponuje najbardziej, że tak powiem, nowoczesnymi technologiami, że w obliczu tych wyzwań państwa członkowskie są gotowe współpracować razem, mimo że to dotyczy również kwestii bezpieczeństwa narodowego i to rzeczywiście uruchomiło bardzo taki wyraźny proces takiej refleksji po tej kolejnych działań prawnych dotyczących analizy tego, chociażby kto jest dostawcą sprzętu telekomunikacyjnego, jakiego typu środki prawne należy podjąć, by rzeczywiście spowodować, by cena nie była jedyną, że tak powiem, jedyną elementu wyborów, jakie dokonują operatorzy telekomunikacyjni, ponieważ stawka jest rzeczywiście bardzo wysoka. I w tej całej jeszcze historii, to co jest zresztą być może ważnym elementem, który pokazuje, że Europa ciągle, że tak powiem, się w tej grze liczy, że wśród tej bardzo małej grupy liczących się dostawców sprzętu mamy ciągle dwie firmy europejskie, Ericsson i Nokia. Już zupełnie na koniec, Michale, może tylko powiem, że to, co jest też niezwykle ważnym elementem tej komisji w dziedzinie cyberbezpieczeństwa, to jest jakby pewne myślenie o rzeczywiście suwerenności technologicznej, autonomii strategicznej, której elementem jest nie tylko działanie na rzecz tego, byśmy przyjmowali reguły, które będą obowiązały wszystkich, również firmy, które z zewnątrz, które dostarczają usług na europejskim rynku, czego sztandarowym przykładem jest RODO, ale że również jesteśmy w stanie inwestować skutecznie w technologię, skupiać ze sobą zasoby, jakie mamy w państwach członkowskich i dosłownie w tych dniach oczekujemy ostatecznego porozumienia takiego flagowego projektu, jakim jest Europejskie Centrum Kompetencji w dziedzinie cyberbezpieczeństwa, które jest to coś w rodzaju nowej agencji, ale nie jest to agencja sensu stricte, rodzaj partnerstwa, które umożliwi wspólne wydatkowanie dużych bardzo środków z nowego programu Cyfrowa Europa, który miejmy nadzieję budżet, że tak powiem, zostanie ostatecznie uruchomiony i przyjęty i to będzie też taką bardzo praktycznym sposobem działania na rzecz tego, byśmy również w tym wymiarze technologicznym byli międzynarodowo konkurencyjni. To tyle z mojej strony, dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much, Kuba, for this excellent, very broad picture. And I think it is important for all of us to understand how important cybersecurity is. I remember some years ago, it was a big discussion if cybersecurity should be under the protection and only national authorities, because security is in the treaties, European treaties, is the competence of the states. But I think that step by step we are going forward, and it's much more understandable for all partners how important is cooperation and collaboration at that area. We have no questions addressed especially to you, but it was question the chat, how to join the problems of security and freedom. Because I think that very often when we are discussing about security, there are some threats that, because of security reasons, we will be ready or we will attack some freedoms of people. Could you comment it? Because during the discussion on this tracing apps for coronavirus, it was also raised this problem: security and privacy and freedoms. Could you comment it very briefly?
Yes, I mean, I think it was indeed a very good example of the EU acting in a absolutely extraordinary moment of emergency. I had the honor to be indeed involved on this work on contact tracing apps. What we have seen, these very worrying moments at the end of March, during March of this year, beginning of April, where indeed, this sense of unity and common purpose was a bit undermined by let's say, spontaneous reaction of member states and uncoordinated reactions of member states, but very quickly came a realization, indeed, we need to act together. So this idea of contact tracing apps, which can help, in basically tracing the cases, the infected people, and the exposure to people who have been infected, which is always a part of a traditional response to epidemics. Given the scale, it was seen that the new technology can actually provide additional support given the scale of the challenge. So we've heard, we all heard about the first initial attempts of such contact tracing apps in Asia, notably Singapore. And then, indeed, it was an impressive attempt in an extremely short time of member states acting with the support of the Commission to actually agree on how this should work, notably from the point of view of ensuring that citizens would actually can trust this kind of fancy solution and will not have to be afraid that their very sensitive personal data related to health might be compromised. So I must say that we indeed, in that sense, put a lot of emphasis on ensuring that the right privacy safeguards. And notably also that all involved countries, also seriously look to the cybersecurity dimension of those apps. So far, I think things have been under control. And it was, I think, at that time that I actually also learned the difference between two English words, between tracing and tracking, So we have been consistently saying, one of the essential features of the of the apps is that we are not tracking physical location of people. What we are doing, we are tracing a proximity contact between those who have been tested and who have uploaded, the keys in their app, and the people who have been approaching them to a distance of 1.5 meters. So this was, it sounds kind of trivial, but it was really essential that we actually can tell people that, your government will not actually, will not actually have the data of where you were, even on top of it, which was criticized by some people. It was also not a tool which would be allowing authorities to actually keep the track record of who is infected or who is not, because we had seen that this type of a kind of a policing tool, which notably, which we know have been also rolled out in China, is something that is clearly not in line with European values. And again, it's not just a question of like lofty ideas, but simply people would not use it, if they don't trust it. So I think these are types of dilemmas and concerns that we really have to take very seriously when we are actually taking measures in the area of cybersecurity, which indeed goes very much hand in hand with protection of privacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kuba. I think it was a special added value to our discussion. Now we move to the panel discussion with our excellent guests, and I want to start with a consideration what kind of directions we will have probably in this new Network Information Security Directive. Firstly, as I properly understood it, it will be related with a broader scope because it's not only operators of essential services, but the way in which we will define operators of essential services in the same way in all European member states. You have mentioned in the presentation the different to all of those issues which are important for the functioning of hospitals. Also, I think that digital service providers, the list of those who will be under the special view because of cybersecurity issues will be also broader. Also, I think when we are discussing about digital acceleration, this is a question, what is now the critical infrastructure? And the second issue, the second area important for this new proposal of Network Information Security Directive, as I properly understood, will be related to supporting the cooperation between member states when they are obliged to inform about incidents and also to have stronger cooperation, etc. And on the other hand, it will be the question how to react on some incidents, attacks, and so on. So going to our discussion and putting the problem of building resilience in the European Union, which is important not only for the digital development, but for the functioning of our societies and economies, I want to start with a question addressed to Tomasz Jakimowicz. How important cybersecurity solutions are for the telecom infrastructure? And it was mentioned that it is important for 5G development, and what kind of principles should be taken into consideration in investment processes? Because if we want, for example, to expand cybersecurity requirements, for the supply chain and supplier relationships, and observe those from the perspective of risk management and risk assessment. So it will be also related to the procedures for investments. Thomas, please. Micro.
Microphone. Is it good? Okay. Is it okay now? Okay. Thank you. So again, good evening, everyone. Really a pleasure. Michal, thank you for inviting me to speak at this event. I think this is a very important discussion, and thinking about investment angle from the telecoms industry perspective, and having cybersecurity in the context of all this, I think we have to first of all look at it from the more holistic perspective. The threat landscape really has changed quite dramatically, especially when comparing it with the existing EU cybersecurity legal framework, which back in 2016, when it was put in place, had to deal with very different landscape. And it's timely that we have this discussion today because, take for example, just yesterday, the European Medicines Agency, they have been subject of a cyber attack. And this is the core institution in Europe that deals with the work on possible treatments and vaccines against COVID-19. So we are really living in times with cybersecurity being increasingly influenced by many different factors. And COVID-19 also highlighted how maintaining critical security for connectivity and for fragile and very sensitive data is important. So in that context, I think from the mobile telecom perspective, it's great that we see this clear and legally sound cybersecurity revision coming. So the importance of the NIS directive definitely should be enhanced, and great to hear that European Commission is aiming towards that goal. Now, when thinking about actual investments in 5G, I think what policymakers should take into account is that we need to recalibrate regulations and support sustainable investments in networks and more balanced objectives on network quality, price, and resilience. And I think when looking into the actual 5G adoption and the potential business cases, be it in the IoT connected devices, we see that the investments that will require to meet those objectives is quite significant. European Commission itself, they forecasted that the cost for Europe is around €500 billion if we want to meet the connectivity targets by 2025, including 5G coverage in all urban areas, for example. So if you put this figure into context, total investment by European operators over the past 5 years was around 127 billion. So we have a gap to meet, and it's a challenge. On the top of all that, when thinking about cybersecurity protection measures, those, when thinking from strategic perspective, they seem to be out there and it's possible to reach them, but everything comes with a price. And to provide a safe data ecosystem, we have estimated at the GSMA that Europe needs about 100 billion euros over the next 5 years. And if you put that in a perspective with other regions, the US, for example, the government budget for cybersecurity in this year alone was close to 20 billion. China spent 7 billion last year, and this is expected to grow about 25% per year. And for a perspective, 100 billion euros that is required for Europe to meet those targets is equivalent to about one tenth of EU member states combined defense budgets. So it's an important target to meet. It's possible to meet it, and I think with industry and government cooperation, we can definitely get there. I have many more thoughts to share, but maybe I'll stop here because I understand we will have additional round of discussions. So I'll stop here, and maybe some questions will come from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. And now I move to Darek Kowalski, Professor Darek Kowalski. On the one hand, you have many experiences from the work in this center in Georgia, United States. But on the other hand, as a scientist, as a researcher, what is your opinion how the research and the science can support the cybersecurity development? Darek, please, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Michał. Welcome, everyone. I moved to Georgia very recently, 1 year and a half ago. So I don't have such a thorough experience in living in US, but because we are here, I mean, I live in a place where about 2% of the population works in cybersecurity. So, I mean, imagine a city in which 2% of people works in cybersecurity area. It's a massive scale. It's more or less the size of the health care people who work here. Anyways, I think my first thought was that actually when internet was born, academia was very much involved in it, right? So, and these days when you look at how the new initiatives come, how technology is imported, how it's tested actually, because the very early internet was tested by people at the universities. So these days, the role of universities is somehow secondary. Now the business, politics dictate regulations, dictate solutions. In my opinion, it would be worth to be more creative and go back to the universities and start not only working on new technologies and new policies, but also incorporating various communities of interest together. It's much easier at the university. For instance, at the university, as SWPS University, now we have many initiatives that in the same building put together people from social science, from psychology, from computer science, and so on. And this is, I think, important, but not enough. I think what we need is to involve universities in testing solutions. Universities usually have quite big communities. They have quite developed infrastructure already, like tens of thousands of people involved, students, different roles, right? Students, scientists, administrators, and so on. Why not to involve universities into this process? And my impression is that we are unfortunately not ready for technological infrastructure. We are not ready when the internet came tens of years ago. There were no security solutions at all at the very beginning. And my impression is that these days, okay, we are trying to incorporate some security solutions into 5G, into AI, but to be honest, it's in very small percent. It should be much, much bigger. And my last point is here that we should invest more in education. I mean, if you look at at classical models of information security, they involve compliance. In order of some procedures to be effective and efficient, they need compliance from communities of interest. And my impression is that we don't have compliance from majority of societies, because we don't expose them into cybersecurity, into information. Why don't we teach information at schools? Now, these days, information is an asset, is a science. It's everything that is somehow related. I mean, now it's a new physics of our world. So why shouldn't we teach information? And with information, also such aspects like cybersecurity, privacy, and so on, because we live in this world. We no longer live in only physical world, we live in cyber world as well. So let me stop here. Maybe later on I will have other thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darek. I think it was very impressive because firstly we have discussed about the new model of regulation and for the future some new solutions, thinking about cybersecurity of the European Union. Secondly, we have discussed about how to make secure important parts of the economic development. And also we raised the question of investments, as it was presented by Tomasz Jakimowicz, how to organize those investments, how to fulfill all requirements related to cybersecurity. And you raised the question, the problem of involving universities, involving academia to some testing, to tests of the new solutions. But on the other hand, you touched the level of education. During many discussions of cybersecurity, we defined the problem of cyber hygiene. And cyber hygiene during this discussion should be taught at schools from the very beginning, because many cybersecurity solutions depends on business solutions, depends on regulation, but first of all, on our behavior. And this is crucial. So I fully agree. Now I want, thank you, and I want to move to Liga Rosenthal from Microsoft. How do you think? What is your perspective? What is your view? How thinking about those existed solutions and future solutions proposed after the review of Network Information Security Directive, this big company as Microsoft could adapt to the new requirements or develop existing solutions. Liga, please.
Thank you very much for the invitation to join this very timely discussion. We're very much looking forward to the new cybersecurity package that we hope will be out early next week, or at least next week, to say the least. But I think your question provides a bit of a. I'd like to change your question a little bit. And it shouldn't be how we adapt to legislation, but how we cooperate before, during negotiation of legislation, and after that legislation is implemented. Because I think in an era where technology is developing extremely quickly, it's very important to have this connection with the private sector while the governments discuss exactly how these regulations should go ahead. The regulations and directives are one very important part of how we can go forward, and Europe is certainly leading the way globally on legislation and is an example to the rest of the world. And the maturity in this respect is well received in other parts of the world. So Europe is really on stage for these kind of things, and that can be taken into consideration for more global topics that I'll mention a little bit later. So we are a first responder in a cyber crisis, and certainly we don't want legislation to cause that crisis. So it's quite important to work together to look at how incidents should be addressed and what the security requirements are that make sense on which companies and which services. During the first NIS negotiations, when I was still on the side of government, it was very difficult to distinguish what exactly is critical. 5 years later now, we realize that the digital service providers within the directive are much, much more critical. So I think that discussion has passed, and that's not where the focus will be. The problem is, or the challenge here is, how do you address a critical cross-border digital service that can have an incident in one place, is headquartered in a different place, and then when it comes into the services that the digital services provide, specifically I'm talking about cloud services, where Microsoft has its greatest interest in the NIS directive, how exactly legislation will approach all the different aspects of cloud services. So we were mentioning 5G, but also when we're looking at the DORA proposal, the ECC, Radio Equipment Directive, even legislation on medical devices. It all somehow touches on cloud services and the security of cloud services. So getting that right will be an extreme challenge. And we are working with the Commission, with member states, to see how those discussions can go ahead. But that's certainly a challenge. I think there's lots of opportunities in this particular directive. I think there's lots of opportunities in the cooperation aspect that is in the directive. And it was quite difficult to come to a conclusion about the NIS cooperation group and the CCERT network. But now we've seen, since those discussions, it seems like such a long time ago, but WannaCry and Petya definitely showed that there was a very strong importance for these kind of cooperation groups that did bring together all the European member states. So here I think that we have the opportunity to take that one step further. We can integrate more the private sector, or possibly civil society in these discussions, but certainly on the private sector side, we think that from our experience in this area on cybersecurity, and speaking of government spending a lot on cybersecurity, we do spend 3.5 billion euros on cybersecurity a year. So we have quite a bit of effort in this space. And we've used it in various aspects that are both on the strategic level and on the operational level of cybersecurity. For instance, when you're talking about election security, discussions on election security and the intersection with cybersecurity have originated in the NIS cooperation group. And we've done extensive work on ensuring the security of elections and working proactively with political candidates, political parties, to see how we can cooperate to ensure more technical cooperation on those aspects. The NIS cooperation group is discussing the joint cyber unit. And here there is an opportunity as well to involve the private sector in crisis management, whether it's, in the wake of a WannaCry or in the attacks going on during COVID, or we still have to face the possible, not only disinformation, but the cyber attacks that could be related to the vaccine rollout. So that's quite critical, and it's something that should be already ongoing. We can give more input to the CCERT networks. We work extensively with EC3 and our digital crimes unit on issues such as botnet takedowns. But we have a wide range of expertise on incident management, whether it be in law enforcement, nation state attacks, or other aspects that could be of very high interest to the CCERT network. And getting that information across Europe to be able to discuss it with the kind of information that the private sector can contribute, I think would be quite essential to moving forward on these strategic and operational issues. So I'll try not to take up too much time, but I quickly wanted to address that cybersecurity is not just a matter of regulation, and we certainly look forward to the new cyber strategy addressing both internal and external aspects of cybersecurity and how we can put together all of the aspects that have been mentioned in the EU security strategy, the European Democracy Action Plan, even European Action Plan on Human Rights and Democracy. And even today, the High Representative Vice President Borrell was speaking at the EU NGO forum on human rights, and was specifically looking at how technology is such a driver in human rights discussions these days. We have to look at the more, overall security approach and how technology plays into everything that the EU does internally and externally. And I think that the private sector also has a part in there. We work very actively on promoting the norms of responsible behavior globally, whether it be through the EU or working with the EAS. We work extensively on the 9 principles of the Paris Call for Trust and Security in Cyberspace, which has been endorsed by all EU governments, as well as over 1,000 different stakeholders that have an interest in promoting and looking at ways to implement cyber norms. And the Paris Call addresses 9 different sort of challenges or principles on cybersecurity, including on critical infrastructure, election security, and cyber hygiene, which we were talking about. So we really tried to find not only the big solutions, not only the legislative solutions, but ways that we could make either local, regional, global projects that will address the various challenges in cybersecurity. So I'll stop there and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Excellent. I think it's important because very often when we are starting the debates on cybersecurity, many participants of those discussions are talking about technical requirements and so on and so on. It is crucial, it is important, but you have mentioned also those issues which are important for the societies. Yes, for example, the security of elections, the security of the functioning of civic society organizations. In Poland, we are discussing now, after some protests and manifestations and so on, how to organize the big debates using the secure platform for those civic debates and with feeling that there is no interrupted by, and it couldn't be interrupted by the government. Yeah, so this is, we are discussing about Lumio, and there are many new possibilities to create those kind of platforms. Now we will thank you, Liga. We will continue, but now we can move to Krzysztof Silicki. And I want to say that please just accept the redesign of our discussion today. We will finish the first round with Krzysztof Silicki intervention, and after that we will open the discussion with Sir Julian King with his presentation, and after there's a session of questions and possible questions and answers, and at the end, the last 10 minutes, we will come back to the panel with final conclusions. It's related to the time of Sir Julian King, so please forgive me this change, but I think that it will be also interesting for our audience, yes, to have the possibility to listen to him. Now, Krzysztof Silicki, could you share with us your experience how to build the cooperation between countries? Because it was raised very strongly by some people during the panel, how important is collaboration, how important this obligation to collect the information about incidents. And you are also working with ENISA, European agency responsible for those incidents and cybersecurity. So what is your view, how from the how European level should be joined and linked to the activities done by the national levels? Krzysztof, please, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Michał, for inviting me to this interesting meeting and panel discussion. I assume you can hear me? Just confirm.
Just a little louder.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Okay, great.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Michał, for inviting me to this interesting meeting and a panel discussion. Yeah, right. The cooperation is the crucial factor in terms of developing cybersecurity, especially of a cooperation in cybersecurity with my own past experience and today's roles. So really, yes, I have the perspective of a national perspective, as I was responsible for creating the first computer emergency response team in Poland, and I was responsible for preparing the first legislation implementing the NIS directive. But I also have experience from the European level, having the possibility to work in the management board of ENISA. So really, current NIS directive developed two important mechanisms of cooperation, like NIS cooperation group on the policy level and the CSET network on the more operational level. And this is a really very big and good experience, because it this history is not so long, but it proved for me that those mechanisms were important to have on the EU level. So from the CSERT perspective, so teams, incident response teams, there's a long history of this. So like 25 years of development of CSERT, of CERT community around the world. So when I remember when CSERT network concept was announced, people from CSERT or CERT community asked themselves, why we want to have another network of cooperation among CERTs? Because we have TFC CERT in Europe, and now there will be another one. But it is really not another one network of cooperation, because it is under the umbrella of the, let's say, systematic or systemic approach, which was introduced by the NIS directive and national legislations. And what is also important is the role of ENISA, because ENISA, especially after coming into force, the Cybersecurity Act received more tasks and bigger role in also in the cooperation between member states and the CSERTs in cybersecurity. Of course, the certification in cybersecurity is a bigger new task for ENISA. But let's not forget about so-called Article 7, when this so-called operational cooperation was introduced. And as you said, Michał, in the beginning, there was, and there are still discussion about what does it mean cybersecurity on the European level, considering that the member states are responsible for this, and so there was really very tough discussion about this paragraph of Cybersecurity Act about the operational role of ENISA, and one thing that I would like to show as an example is the fact that now ENISA have to start of facilitating the information sharing about cybersecurity to produce technical reports on cybersecurity on the European level. Let's imagine that up to now there is no source of the information about situational awareness on the European level. So in each member state there are several mechanisms to produce reports and situational awareness from the national point of view. But the question, who is responsible for showing or analyzing the situation on the European level? The answer is nobody. Of course, there are some reports that you can read, which are provided by the private market, and they are great. But from the perspective of the European Union as a body or the area of cooperation between so many member states, there was a lack of this, and the cooperation is very important from also that point of view, that sharing actionable information, which means information that can give the possibility to start the action or reaction to threats or incidents are very, very important factor. So of course there's always the question of trust. If we are cooperating, how we trust partners. And it is of course not only the problem of technology, it's also the question of the strategic discussion. So when you consider 5G cybersecurity toolbox, for instance, you have so-called technological measures to be implemented to assure the cybersecurity of 5G, but also the strategic ones. And those strategic ones are also touching the question of trusting vendors from outside of the European Union and something like this. And certification, which is very, very important, development in the European Union under the Cybersecurity Act. It's not enough, because this is if you are treating this as the only factor of trust, because also other aspects are important. This is, of course, I don't go into details, but probably you know what I'm talking about. So if we could think of factors that can be supporting more this maturity of cybersecurity on a European level, for sure we should try to think to implement the new or more mature mechanism of the cooperation. Of course, there's discussion about joint cyber unit, about cyclone network because of large-scale incidents and crises. So we are waiting for this new round of this Deming cycle when you plan, do, check, and act, and after implementing the NIS directive, assessing the impact on this in member states. Kuba was saying about this. Now we are in the phase of developing so there are lessons learned, and now it's a very important phase to plan new developments or new mechanisms, also for the the cooperation in cybersecurity, which is the subject of this question of you, Michał, and let's stop here. Maybe we will have the chance to go further on this, but this is what NIS directive achieved is really not to compare with the situation what we have during the last 25 years, really.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Krzysztof. You have mentioned the maturity of cybersecurity at the European level, and I think it will be a very good starting point for Sir Julian King. And now we will move to his short lecture, and after that we will have a Q&A session. And I want to invite all participants from the audience to put some questions, and also panelists. I think if you want, there is a possibility to put the question to Sir Julian King. So, Sir Julian, let's start. And this maturity of cybersecurity of the European level. Please, the screen now is yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to join you It's very timely. It's also a pleasure to be talking about cyber, something that begins with C, instead of Brexit, something that begins with B. So this is a welcome break for me as well. I'm going to say something about action at the European level, indeed the European Union as a security actor, something about cyber, we're in the thick of it already, why I think it's very important that we have the widest possible concept of cybersecurity if we're going to make progress, and the importance of international cooperation, if that's okay. So why are we doing this at the European level? I think it's really important to do it at the European level, and I think that's probably come through in some of the remarks already and in your discussions. The European Union sometimes gets criticized because it doesn't do everything people expect as a security actor. I think that's a bit unfair. In some respects, particularly security aspects of foreign policy, the EU is challenged sometimes, but that's because the EU lives in a difficult neighborhood. I don't have to tell you that. We've got some difficult neighbors and we have some difficult foreign policy challenges which aren't always easy to tackle. On defense, sometimes the expectations have run a little bit ahead of the reality. But on many other security challenges, I think the European Union has an absolutely key role to play and has proven its worth on what we sometimes call new security challenges. So whether that is tackling terrorism, tackling cyber, hybrid, these questions of securing our critical infrastructure, questions to do with health security, climate security, I think the European Union is a very, very useful, in some respects, I think, essential security actor, because you need a variety of policies and instruments if you're going to try and make progress, because you need to be able to reach out to a variety of partners. You have to work with the private sector and businesses, as we've heard, but also with civil society, NGOs and others, and you need to be able to work with international partners. And I think the European Union has proven that it's well placed to do that. It's including on cyber. Now, when, as you and I remember, it hasn't always been at the absolute top of the priorities. There was a time a few years ago when it wasn't as high up the priorities as arguably it should have been. When I started talking about some of the issues to do with cybersecurity with my colleagues in the College of Commissioners, I think sometimes they thought, if you know your Dickens, to use a Christmas analogy, they thought I was a bit like Scrooge at Christmas. I was spoiling the party. Everybody wanted to focus on the positives, the upside, the need to complete the digital single market, to get all of the benefits out of that, which is of course right. But as you and I know, it's also important, if you're going to maintain trust and confidence and engagement, that you are open and honest about some of the risks, including the security risks, and you then have to have a discussion about how you're going to manage and mitigate them in order to make sure that people feel some reassurance and trust in technology. So I'm very glad that things have changed radically in the last few years. Now, the bad guys helped. There was a big impetus from the big attacks, from the spread and prevalence of cybercrime and criminal activity outside of big corporations, touching individuals. There was a greater awareness of the misuse and abuse of technology to cause us harm through illegal activities or spreading of illegal content. And of course, there was a big political focus around dis and misinformation and alleged political interference using technology. All of those drivers meant that there was a new focus on the importance of cybersecurity. And I think that's incredibly welcome and very important. And I believe we've made some progress on the back of that. You've been discussing some of that progress in this session. I think we've made progress on cybercrime, Europol, ENISA, the national authorities. I think we've made progress on tackling some of the misuse and abuse, illegal activities online, everything from illegal products through to illegal content, child sexual exploitation content, terrorist content, open brackets. Just today, I'm glad to say, you're my old friends in the European Parliament have finally signed off on proposals to tackle in legislation terrorist content online. I think that's very, very welcome. We made big strides in what you've called building resilience. So all the work that we've just been hearing about, the ENISA again, the NIST community, the CSERTs, the work that we've done to build better understandings of the measures that need to be done to secure critical digital infrastructure, notably on 5G. All of that, I think, has been very important. We've made progress on securing elections and dealing with political disinformation. We've made some progress on dealing with the international dimension of cybersecurity with an agreement on a framework for the kind of sanctions that might be taken in response to external cyber interference. And the first decisions, absolutely crucial. It's no good having the framework if you don't use it. The first decisions to actually sanction that kind of activity. All of that, I think, is incredibly positive. But there's still more that we need to do, obviously. We need to get the NIST review right, as we've heard. We need to take the next steps on the implementation of the Cybersecurity Act. So that is more work on building resilience, more investment in skills and expertise. Again, I've no doubt you've discussed it, but I think it's very welcome that we've now just got a decision on the Cyber Competence Center that's going to be at the center of a network of cyber competence centers across Europe. That's very important. I think that we need to get on with the work on certification and driving up cybersecurity standards for infrastructure, services, and devices. But we need to do that in a way that is open and cooperative, not closed, not drawing up the drawbridge. So that means engaging with the private sector, and it means engaging with the private sector internationally, not just with a closed approach in Europe. And in general, I think we need to boost our international engagement on these issues with like-minded organizations and partners. I'll come back to that in a moment, because the other thing that I think is very important as we take the debate forward now, building on the good work that's already been done, is the need to develop a comprehensive idea and then approach to cybersecurity. So cybersecurity isn't just some of the targeted actions that we've been discussing, important as they are. It is making sure that we secure effectively all of the crucial digital plumbing of our interconnected lives. So the infrastructure, the supply chains, and the data, the gathering, the treatment, and the exploitation of the data that is so essential to our businesses, our economies, but also our societies and how we want to live our lives. And if we're going to have that comprehensive approach to cybersecurity, then that takes us into a whole range of linked issues, particularly issues around data. I very much welcome the Commission have been coming forward with a series of proposals. There's some more coming in the next days, and there'll be more at the beginning of next year, about how we are going to use, but also how we are going to secure different forms of data. Again, I think it's really important that we do that in an open, cooperative way with not just across Europe, but with our international partners. And I just want to finish by saying that I think the debate, it seems like it's a long way away from cybersecurity and the NIST review, but it's not, it is linked. The debate that is going on now about how far we might be able to take cooperation between the Europeans, the EU, and the incoming new administration in the United States on a range of issues to do with tech and data, not least so that we are better equipped to manage what I think we're now calling the strategic challenge of China, is a very, very important debate also for cybersecurity. And I hope that we're going to be able to do it in a way that brings together like-minded partners and allies, that overcomes some of the reservations that we've had, and some, let's be honest, some of the difficulties that we've occasionally had between Europeans and Americans in particular, between the EU and the US administration, on aspects of tech. So we still have problems around tax, around regulation, around privacy, which I think we have to confront and we have to try and deal with in order to open the way to better cooperation across the whole range of things that I've just been discussing. I think that cybersecurity is a positive addition to that cooperation and a platform for building transatlantic cooperation. So to come full circle, when we were doing this, when we were doing some of the things in the Cybersecurity Act, when we were trying to build up the Europol and ENISA capacities, we learned a lot from looking to what the United States had done. In some areas, we were slightly ahead. In other areas, they were further ahead. We built practical cooperation. It's in that spirit, I think, of practical cooperation and overcoming some of the difficulties that we need now to take the next steps in building our shared approach to a broad set of cybersecurity challenges. I hope that's of some interest. Very happy to try and answer some questions. I don't think that was a lecture. I hope it wasn't. And I don't want to be the only one answering questions. So I hope you'll bring the others from the panel back in as well.
Thank you very much, Sir Julian. I think it was excellent because and very inspiring. Yes, when you have presented the view on the one hand how to internationalize the cybersecurity issues, also looking at the future of cooperation between European Union and United States. I think it will be easier after the results of the US elections. But on the other hand, you have mentioned China, yes, and the key question is if it is possible, when we are discussing, for example, about certification schemes, to make some certifications global, not only European, but global, yes, because there are many question marks, yes, if China will be ready to accept this kind of certifications, models, and so on and so on. So this is one question, I think. Another, you have mentioned the significance of data. There is no possibility to develop European health data space without convincing societies that all of the data collected and processed at the European level and very important for our new health union will be secure or not. So there are many problems, yes, and I think without solving those problems, and I fully agree that data is a key element of the new view on the cybersecurity issues. So those waiting for some additional questions, also from panelists, those two issues: Chinese possibility to accept global certification and global standards, and the data and how to make this secure, how to work, and how to build the trust also among users. Please.
Well, that's very kind of you. So the answer is I don't know how we're going to do those things, but you're absolutely right. Those are the kind of new issues that we need to bring into our cybersecurity agenda. The question of setting standards. Well, I do think we need to be active on this. If we're not active, then we're leaving space to China to, through their regulatory diplomacy, to set standards. As I'm sure you know, as many on the call will know, the Chinese have been very active in international bodies like the International Telecoms Union and other standard-setting bodies on behalf of their businesses, often promoting concrete proposals brought forward by their businesses, not just Huawei, but the other big businesses as well, Alibaba and Tencent and others. And they have used their heft in those bodies, often UN bodies, to build a set of standards and rules that work for their business, but don't necessarily fit our view of what we would require from international standard setting in those areas. Again, all the way through, from infrastructure, through services, right through to interconnected devices. So I think that we need to get onto the front foot. We need to be more active in those international discussions. When we were doing the 5G work, we didn't call out China, as you know. What we did was say, look, we want a set of standards and requirements, both, as somebody was saying a few minutes ago, technical requirements, and also requirements that go beyond the purely technical to wider security issues around the kind of trust that you can have in suppliers. The risk that they may be subject to interference. We set out a set of rules there that clearly had a bearing on how far you could go in engaging with China and Chinese suppliers, but were perfectly objective. If a Chinese supplier was able to answer those, meet those requirements, no one was stopping them from getting engaged. And I think that those would be my two thoughts. One, we need to be more active because we're a bit behind China in some areas of this question of setting standards internationally. And I believe we can have a dialogue about setting standards that doesn't call out one country or one named supplier, but which sets standards that are open to all to try and meet if they can.
Yeah, thank you. And now, Thomas, please, you have the question and you want to intervene. Please, Thomas.
Yes, thank you, Michal. Well, rather a comment than a question, I'd say. And I was listening to what Sir Julian King had to say with pleasure. I think very valid arguments, especially in terms of what key crucial steps we need to take to resilient cybersecurity framework in Europe. And when it comes to certification, I just wanted to raise a comment and awareness also to the point made that this important work when it comes to cybersecurity certification, it cannot be done by the policymakers alone. There needs to be a dialogue with industry. So to close the gap between the knowledge of policy and political objectives and the knowledge of the industry on the ground, and what are the latest developments in terms of technologies that we are pushing forward within the industry. And I think it is really important in that regard that the certification framework introduced by the Cybersecurity Act should be used as an additional means to close the gaps of the NIS directive, particularly with respect to the security of 5G networks. And in this context, as I'm representing mobile communications industry, at the GSMA, we have already achieved quite a significant progress when developing our own industry scheme, so-called Network Equipment Security Assurance Scheme, or more widely known as NESAS. So this scheme, for example, has been developed already in partnership with 3GPP, so it has a solid ground, and it is a great example of how industry can contribute with its best practice to achieving a robust certification for the ecosystem players. And we hope eventually that NESA scheme could become an EU-approved approach. I think in the longer term, this should set a good precedent how industry can contribute to the development of certification, especially when we're talking about 5G longer term, about resilience and cybersecurity framework that should ensure that we have that stable environment within the ecosystem. And that also applies to maintaining that required diversity in the supply chain, because the debate went way beyond technical. It's now geopolitical, it's economical. It has so many different angles that we have to consider. And while I'm at it, just additional points on what Sir Julian King said on education and cyber skills. I think this is somewhat overlooked, but very important. One of the cornerstones of this big puzzle of cybersecurity. I think what we are missing is the expansion of public-private cooperation to raise awareness and build skills and competences that are essential in an increasingly digitalized economy and society. And I think there's a reason why academia has opened this particular event and is hosting it. And we have in Europe a growing cyber skills shortage, simply because there is a misalignment between formal education and private sector requirements. If you look at other regions, China and India have produced fast-growing numbers of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics graduates. And those two countries alone could account for more than 60% of STEM graduates in major economies by the next decade, compared to only 8% what we have in Europe and only 4% in the US. So there's a major gap in terms of knowledge and skills that we are now experiencing in the Western Hemisphere. I think that's a point that needs to be looked at quite carefully when thinking long-term strategy in terms of how to ensure that resilience, sovereignty, and strategic objectives that we're aiming to get for the European continent. So those will be my additional points. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Very, very important. Sir Julian, do you want to comment?
I agree.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, please. If I can put the last question, because we have some 3-4 minutes. You have mentioned the internationalization of our activity, and you have expressed very strongly that we need to be much more active. In some areas, when we are talking about digital future issues, European Union is some kind of norm setter. And how do you think, when we have discussed about GDPR, and after the implementation of GDPR, it turned out that this is a global reference point now, yes? In some countries, there are some different legislative solutions, but the spirit of GDPR is developing. How do you think, how we can make the Cybersecurity Act or Network Information Security Solutions and the discussion about standards starting with the European Union level, but also disseminate this and making some kind of norm setting to our colleagues all over the world?
Okay, so I'll take that as a challenge to also try and address your question about data from a few minutes ago. So I think the GDPR was a great step forward in getting people to think seriously around the protection of personal data. And that has been a step change, as you say, reflected in slightly different legislation in the states, at least parts of the states, but the international debate around the kind of steps that you have to take to protect personal data moved forward. What we're saying now with some of the Commission proposals that have just come out and are coming out around industrial data has the potential in the same way to try and set an agenda. So you said, how would we build, how would we encourage people to share health data if they weren't confident that it was going to be to some degree protected? You're absolutely right. That's the key question. If you want to get the benefits of pooling data and being able then to exploit it to provide services, then you have to have enough confidence to pool it in the first place. And I'm glad that we're moving that debate forward. But, and this is the bit that is a challenge, some of the standards that we set around and how we chose to implement them as Europe around particularly protection of personal data has led to difficulties in data transfers, for example, between Europe and the United States. We've lost two overarching agreements, and we're in the process of trying to negotiate a third, essentially around interpretations of very hard cases around protecting personal data. I hope we're going to be able to find a way through on that, because I don't feel personally comfortable with those kind of divisions and breaks in sharing between like-minded partners like the European Union and the United States, and they have huge potential economic fallout, as many on the call will know. When we come to the debate around industrial data, again, we have to be careful that in developing our ideas and getting the debate going around the right kind of guarantees that you need when you're sharing it and pooling it so that people have confidence, we mustn't inadvertently create new barriers, it seems to me. We must be open, and we must have a discussion about how to remain open. So I was a bit concerned at some of the speculation earlier on that the answer was closed data localization. I'm encouraged that, in fact, the proposals that have come forward now don't go down that route, but they do talk about having to set some sort of tests and some sort of requirements and some sort of standards around how you are sharing this kind of industrialized data in order to have the confidence to pool it. Good, but let's try and develop that thinking in a way that doesn't create new barriers to international cooperation, which we should be cherishing amongst like-minded partners and allies. I hope that is some element of a reply to you.
Thank you very much, Sir Julian. It's also the same situation with artificial intelligence and so on, yes, because when we are discussing about digital sovereignty, we need to, you have mentioned during some conference that sovereignty doesn't mean, and autonomy doesn't mean autarky, yes? Because we need cooperation, global cooperation in the area of internet. Thank you very much, because I know that you have to leave, and I hope that we will organize in the future your lecture, special lecture to the students and to the people from our university. So I hope that we will be okay. That we will be in touch.
Great. Good luck with the rest of the meeting. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sir Julian. Now we are coming back to finalize our discussion. I think that there are many inspiring points for all of us, and I want to start with the question which was discussed in last term, in last round with Sir Julian about these standards and norms. Yes. What is your opinion? And this is also the opinion about certification schemes. Important for European Union, it's described in Cybersecurity Act, but on the other hand, we need to talk about global standards and global certifications. What is your opinion? I will start with Thomas, because I see that you are ready. And after that, I will go through our panel. We have 13 minutes, so it means 10 minutes, because we need to finish at the proper time. So Thomas, please.
Thank you, Michał. very briefly, just to conclude on my previous thoughts and comments, I think what is important in this discussion, also when thinking ahead of a long-running co-legislative process for the review of the cybersecurity legal framework, namely the NIS directive review, I think it is important to make sure that this co-legislative process on this important file would involve industry stakeholders, so to make sure that we have a balanced regime. And while considering how Europe should make a stance in the cybersecurity ecosystem, I think it is important to make sure that we are providing a standard that would not stop at European borders. We need to think globally, be it about the certification schemes, measures that will be provided by the legal instruments to the ecosystem players to follow, because as we know, cybersecurity doesn't stop at borders. It is a beast in its nature that goes way beyond. So we need to make sure that when thinking about what are important things to achieve, we need to have certification schemes that are globally relevant, based on European principles and standards, yet globally relevant. We need to make sure that all the legal tools would be cost effective, that would drive security gains, and they would ensure that we achieve that so required resilience. So all in all, I think, just to conclude my thoughts, if we want this revision of the cybersecurity legal framework within the EU to be effective and to be a success, the EU needs to take that coherent approach. And thus, it would help to achieve not only digital resilience, but also greater security of European networks that our mobile telecoms operators are also investing in so much. And to boil down to the essence, all of this is important and critical for delivering our gigabit society. This is the end goal. If we want to achieve that, we need to make sure that these measures are put in place in a right and a balanced way.
Yeah, thank you very much, Thomas. This is very inspiring. And now I want to ask Darek Kowalski, how do you think about the global certifications, the cybersecurity area, also from technical point of view? So this is one question addressed to you, and another, I would like to come back to the question raised by you in the first round, related to cyber hygiene and digital cybersecurity literacy. Darek, please.
So addressing the first question, I think there is a need for this, but we have some background. We have in US, we have NIST, which is quite well developed, especially this set of standards, SP 800, I think. We also have ISO, which is a global standardization body. So we have some examples, and we can build around adding some European contribution to it. And I think this is a challenge. But I would like to give an example from US. I mean, the processes that are happening now in Europe actually happened in US in about 2013, 2014. So a few years ago. And especially in 2014, there were several acts issued just updating the framework for cybersecurity, both for the federal level and business organizations. And NIST, the standardization body, had a crucial role in it and still has, in terms of setting up standards, certifications, accreditations as well, because federal institutions need accreditation which is something a little bit above just regular certification. So we have examples, but of course we have our specifics. So I can give you some my personal feeling that after moving to US from Europe, I mean I feel it's a little bit different. I mean the way that the society works is different. The way cyber protection works is a little bit different. I mean it's material for longer discussion, but it's a little bit different. So we shouldn't resign from our European specifics and add this. But what happens a few years after this revision of cybersecurity policies in US, they set up grant challenge because most of the initiatives are successful if there is a grant challenge involved. So, I mean, if you think about development, technological development, then there was like the Moon Challenge, right? And there were a couple like Genome Challenge. There were usually some great challenges that triggered some huge development. And what did US do for that? After a few years after this 2014, they set up a grand challenge, which is US Cyber Army. And development of US Cyber Army is at the moment, in my opinion, this grand challenge in US. So they could succeed because they put lots of effort. So I know people from various forces that are now focusing on cybersecurity and around. There are outreach activities to schools and stuff like that. So perhaps in Europe, we should think about some grand challenge that will somehow give some additional speed and mass to this process of establishing like global information system, but secure information system and private information system. The second, just short thought, is about expansion of China. I mean, this is well observed at technical conferences. These days, huge, massive number of people from China are trying to possess like committees and so on and technical conferences. So this is really happening. And finally, work on confidentiality, privacy, anonymization. We have some tools in science. We need to use them as well to make sure that people feel safe. So they will comply with the process. They will support the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Darek. And now I will go to Liga. You have mentioned at the beginning how important is not only to react on legislation, but to cooperate during the time of preparation of legislation. And when we are discussing about global standards, Microsoft is a company which is global. So when we are discussing about cybersecurity standards and norms, what is your view? Because probably I don't want to be naive, but probably it would be easier for you and for business development, Microsoft development, if we will have this kind of general certifications and standards at the global level. What is your opinion how we need to work or cooperate to think about global solutions at that area?
Well, I think you correctly guessed that Microsoft, of course, would wish that there would be one standard, one certification for every single category of product service, but that's indeed not the case. There's national, European or global standards that we have to take into consideration, and we certainly do. I think that the Cybersecurity Act and the certification framework that the EU is working on is a good step towards harmonizing the approach to certification in Europe, which is quite important. And that should also be recognized that whether those certifications are along the same lines as international certifications or European, it's a good step to at least have it at the European level. So that's one certification for all EU member states. That's still progress, and that's a good thing. I think when you look at a company like Microsoft, for us, it's possible to manage to adapt to any certification scheme that's made globally. I once spoke to a product developer in our engineering team, and he said, the problem's not adapting to the certification, it's putting another label on our product that, you know, in the small space where you have to put a new one. I mean, that's more of a joke, but that's for a large company, it's possible to adapt. And as we have a very high standard of certification for ourselves, we globally address these things at, you know, that we are very fortunate that we can adapt. We can certify wherever we need to. That's not the case for small companies. If European small companies or medium-sized companies want to certify and export products, it will be more difficult if they have more certification schemes to comply to. And while that's not an issue necessarily for us, if certification is put on large companies to increase cybersecurity standards, it may be a bit of a paradox to smaller companies. And here I think that we have very little time left, and I'll have to leave in a moment. But here I also want to address the clash between political objectives and sort of technical cooperation and what makes sense in cyberspace and on digital policy. And we have to realize there's a trade-off. There's always a trade-off, between privacy, cybersecurity, between data localization and the free flow of data. And we have to look at this from a very practical mindset that if we want to achieve political objectives and to, we have to realize what the consequences are of political objectives in, you know, working with European or global approaches. And I hope that those policymakers making those decisions fully realize that. However, I do want to recognize that the Commission's EU-US agenda for global change addresses these issues in a very proactive manner. It addresses the unprecedented window of opportunity we have with a potentially new administration in the US. And this is an excellent time to cooperate on crucial issues such as tech governance, online platforms, development of trustful mechanisms for free flow of data, and the list goes on in that document, where we can come to an agreement in a transatlantic zone on sort of a shared space of democratic practices and values to work on digital issues together.
Okay, thank you very much, Liga, for your contribution to our discussion. I understand that you need to leave. And now I will move to Krzysztof Silicki, and we have discussed about European and global certification schemes and possibilities and opportunities. How do you assess the situation in Poland? What do you think, when or how we will be ready to participate in those European works on certification schemes? Krzysztof, please.
Thank you. So I understand that we are running out of time, so I'll try to be very brief. As we told, it is important to be active in the standardization bodies. And we have the Polish members of standardization bodies, and so we know what's going on, and also because of implementation phase of Cybersecurity Act, we are building in Poland certification scheme for national certification scheme. And I would not go into details, but we are active in preparing legislation for this, and also we have the project running from 3 years to prepare the first, you know, certification laboratories and certification authorities for cybersecurity. So we will be prepared. However, it is still the big question about this proportion between national standards, European, and would we like to have the global standards? I think we would like to have the global standards, and even going further, I think the European Union can play the role as a reference point, as you said, Michał, about the GDPR. Why? Because let's remember what does it mean the certification approach of the European Union. It is a cybersecurity certification of products. So let's say 5G components, IoT devices, services. What does it mean, services? The example is cloud services, but also the certification of processes. So not only products, not only devices, also services and processes. What does it mean, certification of processes? As an example, from my head, we would like to concentrate on the most valuable impact we can achieve from the certification of processes, let's concentrate, for instance, on a certification or standardization of process of security updates. You have security updates everywhere. Yes, you have to have security updates. But as you know, the security updates can be also dangerous because so the history of the certification, global certification, is concentrated on our products. Is a heavy certification. So this testing can take several months, and after you change the version of the software, you are losing, roughly speaking, you are losing certification. So the European style of certification is also the lighter standards, lighter certification schemes, because in so big dynamics of developing, software, devices, services, you cannot stick to this old style certification, which is globally accepted, but not in line with the future challenges. So this kind of certification, which is under the framework of CSA, is very proactive and modern one. So for me, so making it more globally, this kind of approach is very interesting, and the European Union can be this reference point or showing this path to developing the certification globally. I mean, the certification of cybersecurity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christoph. I think it's important to remember about the need of updating some solutions, yes? So this is crucial because we are not talking about something which will be stable through many, many years, yes? And now at the end, I want to ask Kuba Boratyński, how do you think, how important is cybersecurity? It's clear that you think about it, but on the other hand, how to convince people, policymakers, and also representatives of different kinds of businesses and civic organizations that cybersecurity is not the threat to freedom. Somebody asked about cybersecurity during the discussion, if it is if some solutions will create the position of the new big brother. How important it is for the safe, secure digital development, which means now not only digital development, which means development. Please, very briefly. I'm sorry, but
okay.
Please.
No. I think my feeling is that we probably passed that stage of actually being in the need to convince the broad range of different stakeholders about the importance. I mean, we also see like cybersecurity is risk number 1 or 2, depending on different types of rankings, widely recognized. But I think what we are saying actually points to a very important point, or a threat, that we clearly see that cybersecurity measures are being seen as, can be used as a pretext actually to curb fundamental rights and freedoms. And I would expect that that basically the strategy that would be published next week, the updated strategy, I think in my view would be a sort of a powerful also way of recalling that in all of this at the same time we are extremely committed to the idea of global unfragmented open internet, which is becoming increasingly difficult, and also we feel that you can actually promote security measures, including for the internet as a whole, without actually compromising these values. But this is, of course, going to be a continuous, let's say, debate. And of course, the test of the pudding is that also, everyone is sort of avoiding the temptation of making shortcuts, which indeed would undermine the trust of people in digital and in all this narrative about importance of cybersecurity. Thanks.
Thank you, Kuba. So we finish with the word trust as a crucial for all those issues discussed by us. Thank you very much to all of you for the discussion, for many inspiring suggestions and thoughts. I think it was useful and very, very fruitful. At the same time, I want to thank the team who prepared those solutions. It was a question addressed to organizers if this recorded discussion will be accessible. So I hope that it will be accessible. But I will ask Konrad Maj at the end, because when I'm thinking about these Humantech meetings, today this is a part of the Inner Circle conference. So thank you very much for organizers of this conference. But especially I want to thanks to the Konrad Maj as a spirit, as a key person building these Humantech meetings at the SWPS University. And Konrad is writing that it will be accessible. So thank you very much, Konrad. Thank you very much to all of you, and have a nice afternoon. Secure, safe, and cyber secure. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Michał, and thank you to all of you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Tak, dziękuję bardzo.
Dziękuję.
Do widzenia.
Dziękujemy.